All right, I call this meeting to order. Welcome. Thank you. Oh, no, you're fine. I'm fine. I feel like, no, you're fine. Thank you. Okay, like the paper. Now that we all have an agenda, can we approve the agenda? Okay. Awesome. Harrison, all those in favor? No. Motion is approved. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Awesome. Harrison. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Minutes are approved. And we're moving on to new business, our legislative update. Take it away.
Sure. So it's all budget all the time up in Lansing. They've gotten kind of their first out of the gate commitments done. They're really turning their attention to getting the different appropriations bills through committee and reported out. I anticipate that'll take most of the spring. And once we get into summer before recess, I think we'll start to see the legislature turning back to a more policy-driven agenda and into the fall. On that front, my understanding is our local speed limits bill will be getting a hearing in May, which is very exciting. The committee chair is supportive. There's bipartisan support on the committee. Everybody seems to agree that this is something that should be moving, so that's very good. There'll also be a kind of a round 2 on gun control, which I think will be one of the first things to move after the budget gets approved and adopted. So that's good for us.
Any chance that will? Do you mind if we jump in?
Please.
Okay. Any chance that will include the ability to make restrictions on the local government property?
Yes. Okay. So we spoke with Senator Irwin about that directly, and he, I think, already had legislation cooking that was introduced a couple days later with a whole bunch of sponsors. And so, and the feedback that we got is that that'll be part of the broader conversation, the broader package. It helps us that a lot of these legislators are former school board members and city council members, and they, they understand the importance of it. So, so that's been good. We're hearing a lot of talk in the fall that there will be a focus on economic development tools, not necessarily packages, but on kind of changing the tools available to state agencies and to municipalities, which is very good timing for us. So I'm excited to, once we get through the budget, I'm excited to have those conversations with our legislators. That'll be, I was saying we have the separate projects to evaluate our economic development practices, and they'll, part of that is looking at best practices from across the country and looking at state laws and local powers that municipalities have. So we'll be in a really good position to have those conversations in the fall.
That's great. Would that be something we could maybe do another breakfast meeting with our legislators?
I would love that.
Okay.
We should definitely do that.
Okay, because I think we'd all probably like to be part of that conversation.
For sure.
I sat in on a related note presentation by Ned Stabler. Have you heard about this presentation that he's been giving? I'll forward you a PDF. It's all about economic development and how Michigan is doing it wrong, what we need to do differently in his view. So timely.
Yeah, that's great.
And what tools local governments need.
Great. So that's where we are in terms of legislation. Everything's on appropriations right now. So I can talk about appropriations if you'd like. We are doing very well with our CDS requests, our community project and community directed spending requests. We have our preliminary feedback on our federal requests has been very good. I think it's likely we're going to get more than one this year, which is always our goal, is to get more than one. We are helped by the fact that Senator Peters now sits on the Senate Appropriations Committee. We've had a lot of good discussions with his staff. I was able to meet with him directly when I was in DC last month. And so I think we're in a very good spot there. They're still going through their appropriations process. They haven't started their subcommittee hearings yet. But essentially, you know, what we get through, if we make it through the subcommittee process up to the appropriations committee, I think we're going to be in good shape. So we're, you know, crossing our fingers. Now, of course, on the federal level, budget has to be approved by both chambers. We all know the you know, wonderful political situation we find ourselves in DC with that. So it might be a while before a federal budget is finally adopted, but it's a good thing that the House leadership and the GOP leadership in the House has preserved some form of a community projects process. But that just makes it more likely that everybody's projects survive. Yeah. So we're good there.
I'm wondering if we could, when it's all said and done, I'd like to compare how we've done with appropriations this year versus, you know, the last few years. Just anecdotally, it feels to me like our new lobbying firm is really helping us in that respect.
Yes.
And in a way that we have not experienced before. And so that's one measure in my mind of how we're doing.
Well, I'm happy to sing their praises right now.
Okay, take away.
I think both our state and federal teams have been immensely helpful in the appropriations process and on the policymaking side. Andrea is a wonderful partner. We text and chat multiple times a week. And on our federal side, I'm on the phone primarily with Andy, but obviously Mary Beth, who's not on the call today, but she's an integral part of the team too, and Jim have been immensely helpful navigating our federal appropriations. And I'll point out that I'm optimistic this year with our federal appropriations. One of the reasons why is we had proposals that were very well calibrated in terms of their eligibility under existing federal funding programs, in terms of thinking about projects that our federal elected officials would be interested in. And that starts with the knowledge that they have in DC and the legwork that they've been doing for years to help us get these applications, the conception of them kind of starting off in the right spot. But they're also, when I was in DC, Andy and I were banging down doors on the Capitol, and there's follow-up, and there's calls that come in advance, and there's the, hey, I know Ann Arbor was here. I just want to emphasize this and this are their top priorities. What can we do for them? Andrea in Lansing and the whole team in Lansing and our federal team have been really active and really fantastic for us on that front. So, yeah.
Very good.
Thank you.
Cool.
Very good. So on the state side, I also feel optimistic about our community project funding. Again, that, we're still at the very beginning stages, kind of looking for our members to sponsor the community project requests we have. The Senate and the House are running on a little bit of a different timeline. The Senate is actually a little bit of ahead of the House right now. They'll be running through their committee processes in May. The House will be shortly thereafter. But we did one-on-one meetings with our legislators to talk through what our priorities are. Those were very productive. We're blessed to have a really great delegation from Ann Arbor and really great representation both in the House and the Senate side. Very good partners. I've been up in Lansing. I was there the last 2 days, talking and meeting with people. I think that we're going to do well this year with our community projects. So I'm optimistic.
like shovel ready?
Yeah, I mean, we have several projects that are shovel ready. I mean, the minute that the budget passes, some of them, we already have contracts in.
Okay.
So it's literally like, boom, we're doing it. So I feel very good about where we are. Any questions on the funding?
Do the schools and the county have different lobbyists? Like, have they engaged lobbyists the way that we engage?
Yeah, through their professional associations or directly through lobbying firms. You know, U of M is doing the same thing.
In the county,
Oh, yeah.
cities?
Yeah, this is every, I mean, even the small cities in Washtenaw County have lobbyists engaged up in Lansing. This is a pretty normal thing for cities, and it's good that we're at the table both federally and at the state level.
Do we ever chase down projects like collaboratively? Say like if the city and the county wanted to work on re-envisioning social services down the ways, is there a way to look for federal or state funding to do that?
I would think so. We have to scope the projects. I mean, a lot of times the projects that are where there's broad interest, we'll work with lobbyists from other organizations. I can think of a handful of times we've done that in the last 2 years, or we'll work, we'll loop in SEMCOG or MML or something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, coalitions are really important to getting things done in Lansing. It's better to show up with a bunch of friends. So,
like one of the things I saw was that Adrian recently bought a hotel to do rapid rehousing with like $800,000. We don't have $800,000 in our budget currently, but if we look ahead, or I don't know, keep on our radar somehow, instead of making the Red Roof Inn wealthier with rapid rehousing dollars that we contribute to in the county, if we actually own the property, I believe Adrian has one over us. I feel like competitive about it. Like Adrian again, like figure out how to buy a hotel and do rapid rehousing, And we've sunk in millions at the county level to do these rapid rehousing vouchers. So if there is like any will or funding for at least for us to even think and plan on it, instead of like actually having the money to purchase buildings. I'd be really, really interested in that. I worry because I don't know how far in advance we can really plan. I mean, it's already April, budget's June, and then before you know, we're in the fall and we're back into warming shelter mode in November, right? And I don't know what we can do between now and then warming shelter season that would be different from last year. Yeah, I really worry about how effective and more responsive that we can be on intake work. So if it's looking at like restructuring or I don't know, like consolidating our social services across the county in a way where, I mean, I was looking at like other counties and other cities that use like Tableau will give you like real-time information on homelessness versus waiting for a county partner to give you report outs, which are already a month old. It takes a couple of weeks to collect that data, and then by the time you present it, it's probably another 50 families in the eviction place, right? So, but no one has the capacity to be creative or imaginative. Everyone's just like, this is the latest crisis on deck. We need this amount of money so that, fewer families aren't evicted. But we haven't gotten to a point where I think we can be like, we have this consultant who actually evaluates what our options are, like on property, on like even issues, like getting all the faith-based leaders to build housing on their property, something. I don't know. I'm just poking around here and there on like what people are doing around the country. And I just feel like there has to be a more effective way than me spending time on Googling and being jealous of Adrian, So clearly someone knows how to do this better than me. And if we can get funding around it, I feel a lot better going into the fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
it's something for us to think about. Maybe we can follow up after the meeting and have a more detailed conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
All right,
Great.
is that it for the legislative update?
That's it.
All right, moving on to unfinished business, summary of CDS funding
Well,
request.
we just
Did
go over
that.
that now.
And what about okay, yep, so that's it
That's it.
on
That's,
that, okay,
on the agenda.
great.
So,
Okay, next on the agenda is the amended, policy agenda committee establishing language.
yep, that'll be on the agenda for the first meeting in May. Sponsored by, on the council sponsored section, sponsored by the members of this committee. Should be relatively uncontroversial. It's really housekeeping, but
Yep.
there.
Okay,
Okay,
nothing we need to do on that?
no,
Okay, any upcoming business? Anyone have anything? Private?
I always like figured you'd say something about roads, so I.
But I don't know that I have any upcoming business.
No. Sorry, I assume.
Well, no, this is a question, I think, for Andrea. One of the things we talked about, I guess, is lobbying within, not just the legislature, but showing up organizations like MDOT and MISHDA. And I was wondering if you're kind of seeing any changes there that are kind of positive for our policy agenda, or things, I don't know, we're lobbying within those organizations.
Like taking over
Yeah.
MDOT roads?
MDOT roads plus,
Locally.
well, and also, you know, certain, getting funding for affordable housing in Ann Arbor, like making more local specific, things, benefits for affordable housing here, because some of that Ann Arbor gets caught, Ann Arbor projects get caught in a lot of red tape with MISHDA, and we just see a lot of time lost there, so.
Yeah, I'll say, thus far, there has been a lot of that direct conversation, and of the two departments the department and agency you brought up, not, and at this time, it has been a heavy focus just on these appropriations and a number of policy issues. So a lot of work just more broadly in the budget. But I think once we get through, this budget, the summer kind of going in, even into the fall, it's like the ideal time to kind of have those conversations in the summer as the department and agencies kind of go into the late summer, early fall. They're starting to prepare recommendations to the executive office in the budget office on what their funding requests are. So it takes some kind of pre-planning to kind of get that incorporated into what recommendations we'd see coming then, and changes for programs and funding that might be needed to support that, to follow through from the executive office, and then work that into the next budget to kind of have those programs change. So a little different schedule that gets followed with that, and that engagement really is critical over the summer months.
Thanks, Nanda, that's really helpful, thanks.
I had a question too, just thinking about it being budget season, and are you hearing anything in terms of statutory revenue sharing, and whether the legislature is planning to do better than they have in the past for local governments?
Yeah, there are two proposals. We saw them last year as well that would establish what they're kind of calling a revenue sharing trust fund. So similar stream of dollars that's going in, but they dedicate it, and then they stream into a fund for revenue sharing and can't be used for any other purpose. So it really kind of protects those dollars from being, and typically we see it happen in times where there's an economic downturn and revenues are restricting, and we'll see less going into revenue sharing and used to fill other areas of the budget, and really see local government shortchanged in those circumstances. So there's a proposal, there are two different ones. One's a little different in that it tries to increase revenue as well, and has that streaming more towards counties to grow how much county governments receive. But MML and MAC and MTA all kind of involved in this whole concept, and we expect to see movement. I think probably when the budget's done, you really start seeing a shift. That's one of the issues that'll be coming up, establishing this revenue sharing trust fund that'll create a lot more stability and certainty in that statutory revenue sharing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's been my understanding that they've been, you know, they shortchanged municipalities from what we are owed via statute every year, regardless of how the coffers are.
Yeah.
So
This money, it would dedicate that into a fund. So there's a little more protection there. Right now, it's just, there are general funds that are allocated. You know, there's a formula that they determine what the amount is, and then they appropriate that, but they can choose to appropriate less. This would have that money going into a fund that couldn't be used for any other purpose. So if they're not appropriating it, it's just sitting in the fund, you know, so it kind of helps. It doesn't guarantee. There certainly could still be workarounds to undo that, you know, but it helps create much more certainty from year to year, and especially in those times of economic downturn, that it's less likely, you know, that local governments are going to receive the funding that is dedicated into that source for revenue sharing. So it's a little stronger protection than what exists today. Again, not an absolute guarantee. There's certainly a way those funds could be deferred through statutory changes, but it provides a great more protection than what exists, because there's really none. It is the decision, you know, simply a decision of the legislature on what they appropriate. You know, there's no requirement. There's just the funding level that's recommended, but there's nothing required. This at least commits those dollars into a fund before they make the decision to appropriate. So it kind of locks those dollars in advance of that. So it can be very helpful. I know there's broad support from, you know, again, all the local government associations to move in that direction because of the protections that does provide, and the stability and certainty on appropriations for revenue sharing.
okay, thank you. Anyone else have questions?
Is anyone talking about Prop A or Headley again to the legislature, or is that just kind of like a?
Andrea, I hear murmurs about it.
I have not heard anything specific, like an action. There may be some, I don't know if there's some legislators, maybe there's someone bringing it up. It's not really resonating, kind of top of mind, top of discussions amongst folks right now, but that might be something that they're looking out at. Just not something I've heard on like next tier of priorities for the legislature, but you know, some of these issues evolve quickly, so we'll let you know if we hear any more on that.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. We now come to public comment. I see we have a few callers on the line. Anyone would like to participate, you can raise your hand to unmute yourself. And you can raise your hand by pressing star 9. Again, if you'd like to make a public comment, you can unmute yourself by pressing star 9. Okay. Seeing no one, public comment is closed. Motion to adjourn. Regina, Harrison, those in favor?
Hi.
Opposed? We are adjourned.